Night of the Living Dead, a horror classic that set the ground of the zombie genre, but also having symbolism over race and class. It was a perfect blend of the classic old monster movie with the gore and violence of modern horror. In the last 10 years, horror remakes have been yin-yanged out of every franchise imaginable. Even recently, Disney has noticed its popularity and have been pulling their own movies into remakes. When it comes to these remakes, the question I ask is, what's the purpose? With the Disney films, they're taking animated movies and translating them into live-action films. But what about the other ones, such as horror? Well, that's what I'm about to go over with 1990's Night of the Living Dead remake. Before I go over the remake, let's recap real quickly over the original Night of the Living Dead for those who may not have seen it. It was written by George Romero and John Russo and was independently made in 1968. And it's kind of one of the biggest horror movies ever made. And the reason being is because it kind of laid the foundation of what the rules of zombies are. They're the dead that comes back to life, they're hungry for flesh, they are killed by getting hit in the head, and when you're bitten, you become infected and end up being the dead as themselves. So, once the movie premiered, it ended up being such a huge success, and George took the series one direction, and John Russo took the series in another direction. George had the Dawn, Day, Land, and Diary of the Dead series, or known as the Dead series, and John Russo took it in the direction of the Return of the Living Dead. And while George was working on the Dead series with Dawn of the Dead and Day of the Dead, he worked with special effects artist Tom Savini. And by the time of the 90s, George felt it was time to remake the original one and wanted Tom Savini to direct it, seeing his work and how well he is with the makeup artist. And a lot of people at this point are questioning, why remake it? Mostly the reason being is because when John and George wrote the script and premiered the movie, that they didn't have any copyrights on it, so they weren't making as much money as they wanted to. And it's a free use movie, so you'll more than likely see the 1968 Night of the Living Dead on pretty much you can be put in any movie, and you can see it in like a whole combo pack of other movies because it's just free of license.
It was a wonderful and a terrible standing on our feet education about the movie business. It's great that the first movie you do becomes a classic. It was terrible that none of us saw anywhere near what we knew the kind of business that it was doing. It was just unconscionable.
So in that regards, George felt it was a way to finally make money off of what kind of started and boosted his career. But the other instances is that Tom Savini himself felt like zombies at this point were kind of dying off. You had Michael Jackson's Thriller, like a Pepsi commercial, and zombies just got so commercialized where they just weren't scary. So you have to remember, this is pre-mid-2000s with Call of Duty Zombies and The Walking Dead coming out before we hit this big zombie craze that everybody was into. And before all this craze, it all started with just a simple concept. I believe that George Romero once said that it's actually less about the zombies and more about humans themselves and what it's like to push people to their limits, trying to survive, and seeing how the monstrosity comes out. The simple concept of Barbara, she leaves the cemetery in a panic, gets caught upside with some more characters, and try to survive the night. It's such a basic concept for a movie that just ended up being phenomenal. Now, there's a reason why I'm showing you the VHS cover. It's because it's great. I mean, yeah, you kind of got like a generic white background. It's not really like a picture or anything. You can tell it's like post-developed. But I mean, the font looks great. You have that creepy eye of showing that it's, you know, like a dead body. And then, you know, you kind of got like this nice color scheme. You got this contrast of green and blue with the red. And, you know, it shows you the zombies throughout the film. And you might seem like, why are you praising it that much? I mean, I like it alone. I've always liked it as a kid. And the reason I'm showing you that is because it's like, it's okay, but then it's super great when you compare it to the DVD. Because the DVD cover is just a piece of shit, man. I mean, look at this. It's a piece of fucking shit. What is this? No, I'm serious. What is this? What is that? I don't know that. I don't remember that from the movie. Is that, I mean, in close comparison, it almost looks like the doll zombie. That's like one of my favorite zombies. But it doesn't look anywhere near fucking like that. It looks like a dead rotting, I mean, it looks like, my best description of what this is Tom and Judy Rose when they get burned alive. But why does it look like that? Why does it look angry? Why does it look black and blue and everything? And not to mention, it's got these weird, like, animated body, dead zombies on the bottom. I'm like, yeah, you got the font. It's missing the eye. It'll look weird. And it's got the font exactly how it was, but it just doesn't look the same, especially when you got this, whatever the fuck this is going on right here. You got these slapped on together animated zombies that just look ridiculous. They look like, you can tell like anybody made this on a computer. And it's like, this is something I would expect from the original Night of the Living Dead, when they were making so many other copies because it was free of use, that they would just slap you whatever copy of whatever picture on the cover. But this is actually George Romero's licensed cover. I mean, the bottom, you know what this like half of this cover reminds me of? It reminds me of like if you went to Goodwill and you see a collection of CDs that like some old person had, like a collection of just like Christmas Carol CDs, and then like Christmas with Bing Crosby, and then you see a couple like 90s like hip hop CDs, but then you get to like the bottom of the barrel or something, and you just see like these ambient sound CDs of like horror music of what you would play during like a haunted house when it's Halloween time. That's what the cover reminds me of. The only thing I can really praise about this is not the case, but the disc itself. If you look at the disc, it shows, I mean, the creepy zombie again, which is kind of stupid in my book, but it also shows the still frame. But I like that it's half black and white and it's half color. And I just noticed this not that long ago. It's like a nice metaphor for the movie, the original 1968 being black and white, and it's now moving to color. But other than that, that's all I got to say about it. The one quote that gets me, and it's on both of them, it's a must for every horror fan to see, which I highly agree with. The one thing that cracks me up about that, though, is that it's said by Dr. Donald Reed, Academy of Science Fiction, Fantasy, and Horror. What kind of freaking academy is that? I would like to see that kind of academy, and especially, like, doing a parody of that from the Police Academy. One weird thing that I've noticed between the VHS and the DVD cover is this weird barcode. I know that the original one, the barcode was used for being purchased, and the DVD, I'm pretty sure the plastic around it was what was scanned to buy it. So, what's the purpose of this barcode? I'm just slapped on the back of the VHS. And the even weirder part is that the UPC number is almost exactly the same. So if anybody has an answer to that, I'm more than willing to know what's up with this. So let me go into some details and explore more into the movie. Now, I may seem like I might be praising it, but to throw out the one con that I believe stopped this movie from being perfect is one thing. Judy Rose. No, not her character as much. She's supposed to be the dumb teen, and I can handle a good dumb teen in a horror film. Now, the thing that makes her annoying for me, and I'm sure a lot of people agree once they watch it, is her scream. Now, I'm not saying I don't enjoy a good horror film scream every once in a great while. It's what makes a slasher movie. But for some reason, she has the most annoying scream that I've ever heard in a horror film in my life. And the worst part is, it just keeps going on and on and on. And once I get to that point, I know what's coming up, and I'm going, here comes that part of the movie where it's nothing but screaming for 20 minutes, and then I can't wait to get past it. Ah, God damn! That's like listening to Godzilla screech. The acting in this movie is really great. I think one of the strongest actors in this movie is Tony Todd, who plays the character of Ben. He slightly resembles the original Ben, and his voice sounds pretty similar, but his performance is dead and spot on to any character that you feel like you personally would feel like if this apocalypse or this event would likely to happen.
What about you, Mr. Ben? You don't exactly look like neighbors yourself.
And of course, I had to cast a black man. Lucky for me, Tony Todd walked in the door. We handed him the script, and he went out in the hallway for 5 minutes. Came back without the script. Memorized it like that. Tears just came out of him during his audition. I closed the book, said, that's it. We're not looking for Ben anymore. This guy is Ben.
One thing that I really enjoy in this movie that I feel like makes it even creepier than the original is the music. The original music has that nice classic, like that monster movie kind of feel. And it's really enjoyable. I mean, I've even used it in a video. But for some reason, the music in this is just so bone-chilling. The movie starts, and you hear this. I don't know what it is. It sounds like, from my idea, what I picture is this really like stringy guitar, and like some reason you're pulling the strings and it's making like a warp sound. It almost sounds like what you expect. I don't know, some really tight metal wires if you plucked them, if it was to make that sound. And it's very eerie, and then you get like this stinging like mosquito sound, or kind of, it's hard to explain. Just listen to what I mean. Just listen to it and you know what I mean. It's very bone chilling. You don't even have to watch the movie and it gives you goosebumps. And every great movie score, especially horror score, should do that. I mean, look at Psycho, look at Halloween, look at Jaws. You hear the music and you just instantly, you think of the movie, but it also, like, you can take that music and put it anywhere and just make it just creepy, and it creates a scene. And I feel like that opening song, I feel like that's what it does. Not to mention the credit song. I love the credit song. When I watched this as a kid, I used to put on the VHS and, you know, I'd watch the movie, but every now and then that groovy, funky, just like guitar music would play at the end, and I loved it. I wanted to learn how to play that as a kid on guitar. And it sounds like a guitar, but at some points when it starts going super fast, it almost sounds like an organ or a keyboard. And so this movie ties a lot into my childhood. You know, a lot of people watch a movie as a kid and they really enjoy it, and this falls into my line. It probably explains why I've seen it so many times, or want to watch it so many times. I mean, I remember sitting as a kid, legs crossed on the couch, holding the VHS box in my hand, and then like looking at the pictures and like looking at the movie and just waiting for it to happen on the movie. And I think Tom Savini did a great job on the makeup effects in this movie. To me, personally, this in the remake, these are the scariest zombies ever made. I mean, yes, World War Z and Dawn of the Dead remake, you have the running zombies, the sprinting zombies, where you're kind of screwed in that situation. But as for the zombies themselves, they're not really terrifying as much as the 1990s remake. Because these bodies, he did such a great job, because the fact that he was in the Vietnam War, he knows what dead bodies and death looks like. So to be able to see those dead bodies come back alive is truly, really terrifying. And it really grabs that concept of what zombies are, or what the dead are. And these bodies really look like crime scene victims, or they really look like they're rotting flesh.
The key zombies all wore these special lenses, so the eyes were gone. So if you looked in the eyes, there's nobody there. Erase the eyes, you erase the person. So that's what we try to do with the zombies in my version, is try to get rid of their eyes and make them soulless.
There's a lady who's holding a doll, and just the way her face looks and her eyes are just truly terrifying. And that actually terrified me as a kid. And there's been none other movie up to date to actually scare me at that level or have that terrifying effect as any other zombie could. I haven't found one yet. And I do love that in the original, Ben is somebody to root for, and he's also somebody to root for in this one. But you can see he's not a perfect character. He has his doubts, and I mean, when he's going with against Mr. Cooper, which, you know, Mr. Cooper isn't perfect either. We all know that he's kind of the worst out of the two. But it's also, I like that it's showing that Ben has also got his bad side. One of the instances I love for a fact, and it's not in the original one, when Cooper's bringing down the TV, and he's bringing it down, and you're thinking, oh my god, he's stealing this. And then Ben takes it and just shakes it, and he goes, what the hell are you doing, man? And then they ended up, while they're like fighting over the TV, it falls down and breaks. So you're thinking, yeah, man, oh my god, stop him. But then Cooper says, you can't get a reception in the basement, dickhead. And then you go, oh wow, yeah, Ben, you kind of fucked up there, man. Back then, it wasn't cable. Everything was rabbit ears. So yeah, you can't get any reception in the basement. You can only get it upstairs where the TV was, or the first floor. So what makes this remake so much different from the original, other than it being in color, it being more graphic, and the fact that Barbara becomes more of an actual character you can enjoy, who doesn't just scream all the time, and actually is more the audience likable character that you're thinking, yes, listen to her. So with that, what makes it different than the original one? It's hard to tell, because on paper they follow the same story. The same chain of events happen. Some of the shots are almost shot for shot the original, and it's hard to explain. I think it's just the subtle things, like Ben actually getting killed for being dead, and not actually for being, the irony of people thinking that he is dead, but he's actually alive, to kind of put that sting of the 1968. So when it's 1990, it doesn't have that same effect. I personally think what makes this remake so good that I think other people don't catch is the subtle, very hidden, subtle storytelling. It doesn't feed you all the information at once. What Barbara sees and what Ben sees is all that you're given as well. It's almost like you're the camera person and you're following these characters, and the information that's given is the only information you're given. I'm going to give you an instance. We follow Barbara inside the house, and then she sees, the first thing she sees is a griddle. It's like a pan on the stove, and it's still on, it's still in heat, and she turns it off. That makes you wonder right there, who's having breakfast at this time? Why is that left there? What stopped the person from continue cooking? And then she sees the blood on the ceiling, and the hand falls down. And your first question is, where the hell did a severed hand come from? Then we see the dead guy fall from the second story and falls down. But from there we see he has both hands. So whose hand is that? I mean, it's not something you really question right off the bat, maybe, but then after a while, because at the moment you're thinking, get out of the house, you know, you gotta survive. But it's, after you think about it, you're like, where the hell did that come from? Later, as we're introduced to Ben, and the zombie is dead, he walks upstairs to see a man with a rifle in his hand, and it seems that he shot himself. And if you look down, he's missing a hand. So now we kind of start to paint a picture like, okay, this guy was bitten, he had his hand severed off, for some reason he shot himself. And so, you know, we kind of think we got the whole picture there. But then later we're introduced to Tom, who tells the story about his Uncle Reg and his cousin Sideshow. And then he tells the story enlightening us on the events that happened. So reversing everything, it's kind of, it's not as interesting if he just told us all at once and then we see everything. You know, the way that Tom Savini kind of directed this, it shows, you know, it's giving you all these images in your head of the scenario. You know, it doesn't show you flashbacks of it actually happening. It just shows you kind of like hits and pieces of the puzzle to kind of let your brain do the rest of the work. Now, on the interview, he did mention that about the gore.
Right now, it turns out it's kind of a sterile film, but in a way, that's okay. Because it may sound strange coming from me, but the less you show, the better it is. When the audience completes it in their head, it's more visceral, they create it more bloody than you can possibly show it as an effect. Like Mr. Magruder's head.
It's on Mr. Magruder!
When you have to fill in the blanks of his head exploding,
It's on Mr. Magruder!
it's a lot more gross than what we would have created.
Now, I feel like he really went heavy on that with the story itself. And, you know, there's a lot more examples of kind of filling in that detail. One of them is the monologue that Ben has about him being inside the diner. You know, any other movie probably would have shown a couple flashes of him at the diner, you know, kind of painting an image. But I do like that he leaves it just Ben talking, and it becomes a little more realistic because you in your head tries to picture what that is. And I think that's why I get stuck watching this movie 100 times, because the fact that it's almost like you can reimagine, you know, you're seeing what's on screen, but you're also seeing what's in your head. And it's really entertaining every time I watch it. Everybody has that one movie they've rewatched 100 times and just can't get tired of it. And this just happens to be mine. I'm not going to say you're going to enjoy it as much as I did, but it is really a great watch. I really haven't found a single person that's watched it and says they haven't liked it. I talked to other horror fanatics and they praise about that movie, but it just seems like I don't see it as much on TV. I don't see it at stores on DVD, or even when I go to used game places. I don't really see, they have this giant collection of movies and I don't really see it there. It's almost like with this movie, what happened to it? And I think it's just slightly a little ahead of its time. In 1990 and the 1980s, you didn't really see that many remakes. And when you did, they were over 1950s and 1960s, just classic monster movies. So this one kind of fell out of place at its time. I feel like if they would have remade it in the mid-2000s or the later 2000s, it would have had a big spike, but I feel like it wouldn't have been as good. I think this movie just captures that nice 1990, late 80s country, you know, farm feel.
What in the name of Jupiter's balls are you doing out here alone, little lady?
So if you ever need a good horror flick that you need to put on during Halloween time, or one that you feel like you may have missed, or if you just love the zombie genre in general, definitely give this a watch.